in his
right now.
rejuvenation chamber.
Yeah.
And he will be removed from it shortly.
Listening to industrial music.
Yeah.
But we are the hosts of the Stuff to Blow Your Mind podcast, a science podcast in the How Stuff Works family where we talk about all kinds of weird stuff. We want to unveil the weirdness of reality to you. And one of the things that we talked about this week was an episode, I think, that came out on Tuesday. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday's episode was on the Tower of Babel myth. So we talk about the story, its origins, its possible influences in ancient Near Eastern archaeology and architecture. I guess it would be not influences in archaeology, but what archaeology can tell us about its influences in possible architecture, culture, and other myths of ancient Mesopotamia.
And we get into science fiction. It's one of those episodes where I feel like we touch on just about every possible discipline.
Right, so we do also the art history of representing the Tower of Babel and a little bit about the confusion of languages. But anyway, Trailer Talk is where we come and follow up on one of the things we talked about on the podcast by looking at some movie trailers, clips from movies we like, clips from movies we don't like, anything that might be interesting to y'all. So before we get started looking at today's topic, I just want to remind you that we are the Stuff to Blow Your Mind podcast. If you don't know us as a podcast, you should go check us out wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, what are the other ones? Google Play. Click the subscribe button so you get all our episodes in the future, and you're never in the dark when you see one of these things pop up again.
Yeah. And that's, of course, stufftoblowyourmind.com. That's where you'll find all of it. You'll find all these podcast episodes going back to the crack of doom. But yeah, this episode of Trailer Talk is going to talk about a little bit about Tower of Babel and just sort of towers in general. Like towers as... They tend to be evil. They tend to be symbols of human hubris, or they're the dark layer of some evil wizard or corporate, capitalist overlord.
I was thinking about this last night. How, if you think about just buildings in movies, you can have castles, you can have fortresses, you can have houses, you can have mansions. And it is not necessarily always the case that these places have a moral valence. But with towers, they always do. I was trying to think of a single good tower in the movies or in fiction generally. The only one I could maybe think of was the Ivory Tower in The Never-Ending Story.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But this is maybe a good place to remind you, if you are watching and you want to talk to us, you can leave a comment, and we've got our friend Nathan here writing down comments that you leave. Everybody's pointing at him, making him feel awkward. So yeah, if you want to leave a comment for Nathan to pass on to us, we will hopefully be able to respond to a comment or a question. So maybe the first question to ask is, can you think of any good towers in the movies? Are they all evil?
Well, here's one of the things about towers. Even when in the episode we talk about the Tower of Babel, it's and we're getting into possible Babylonian roots for it. The idea that it was either in actuality or in inspiration a ziggurat. And a ziggurat had particular purpose. It was essentially a man-made mountain, an elevated place that was holy, from which you could observe the stars. And I think that's what we continue to see in representations of a tower. Because what do you do at the top of a tower? You observe, you lord over. Whereas if there are significant fortifications, if there are a lot of people living in it, well, it kind of becomes a castle at that point. It becomes a fortress or some other kind of structure. But like the prototypical tower is just about like having that place of pride and just absolute dominance.
Sorry if my face looked crazy. A phone was ringing offset here. But yeah, you're right. I mean, towers got all this significance. So maybe we should look at the Tower of Babel story itself just a little bit before we start getting into the trailers. So if you're not familiar with the myth, it is in the book of Genesis in the Hebrew Bible. And the myth goes that there were people living in the land of Shinar, and they decided to build a tower to reach all the way up to the heavens. And they started working on it, and God looked down and said, it looks like they're going to accomplish this, and if they accomplish it, nothing will be beyond their reach. So to stop the construction of the tower, to stop them from getting all the way up to the heavens, God confused the tongues of humankind, or I think literally in the original story it's confused the lips of humankind, so that everybody now spoke different languages, whereas before they'd all spoken the same language and could cooperate. And this is what's often known as an etiological myth. It explains the origin of a state of affairs or why something is called something. And so in this case, it explains why people all over the world speak different languages.
It's very interesting, too, and especially in light of a talk I recently attended on the social brain and the evolution of the social brain. One of the theories they discussed here was that as early humans were creating more and more complicated tools, language became a necessary way to communicate with each other about the construction of these tools. And then the more that you use your language, the more you depend upon it, especially to create megastructures like the tower.
Yeah, I mean, language is sort of it's the feature of humankind that enables civilization. I mean, we couldn't have civilization without it, but also another thing we explore in our episode is some of the ways that having some confusion of tongues, the different lips of the world, might be a protective talisman to us as well. It might be a good thing that I keep dropping my notes. Might be a good thing that not everybody in the world speaks the same language, because it provides a sort of mimetic barrier that protects ideas that are destructive from spreading too easily.
Yeah.
But anyway, maybe we should start looking at the trailers. Do you want to look at them?
Yeah, let's pull up our first trailer here, which includes a very literal reference to the Tower of Babel, the new Tower of Babel, as it appears in the classic silent film, and just classic film in general, Metropolis.
Now, this is going to be the restoration trailer, because this is for a film that came out in 1927, which I don't think that anybody was making theatrical trailers at that time. But yeah, this is a German expressionist film by the Austrian-German expressionist filmmaker Fritz Lang. And this is just a classic. Look at these images. That's the mad scientist figure you just saw there is, I think my whole life I called him Rotwang, but really I think it should be Rotwang, right?
Rotwang. Yeah, I guess it would be.
So what's the plot of Metropolis?
Well, this is an easy film to watch and not really pick up on the plot, but essentially you have your mad scientist, you have humanity in a state of crisis, you have the creation of essentially artificial intelligence, artificial humanoids, and all of it's sort of a commentary on a moral commentary on the state of humanity.
A big thing that's a theme in this movie is class, of course. So you've got these class divisions where you have very wealthy industrialists who live in these towers that rise above the city, and they're sort of like literally living in the heavens. They're up in the air at the tops of these structures. And then you have this gigantic underclass of citizens who are the workers who maintain the machines that keeps the city running and keeps everybody alive, and these workers are downtrodden and they're worked nearly to death.
Yeah.
And so and the main character of the movie is the son of one of the wealthy industrialists who is just whiling away his youth in the pleasure gardens of the heavens, and then he eventually becomes aware of the plight of the workers who are keeping the city alive, and he comes to sympathize with them, and there's a lot of weird sci-fi identity swapping where a robot is substituted for the woman that this son of the industrialist falls in love with, and she herself is sort of an inspirational figure who preaches these sermons to the workers. And one of the sermons she preaches in the story is about the Tower of Babel. I think we might have a clip of that section of the movie we can run. Yeah, there we go. I don't know if I can really lean out of the way here, but so there is a section where she's telling the story of the Tower of Babel, but she's retelling it in a way that frames it along with the themes of the movie, which are that the so-called the head and the hands, meaning the envisioners and the workers, don't always get along so well, so you need a mediator between them. Between the head and the hands must be a heart.
And it's it's a wonderful message in the film. I think it still speaks to us today, but it also illuminates just how this idea of taking the tower and drawing some sort of symbolic meaning out of it and creating stories that involve those meanings. Like we've been doing that throughout human history. As long as we've been physically capable of creating an artificial mountain, we've been using those to understand problems in our culture.
Yeah. I think do we have a comment coming in here? Answer to Good Towers. Rick says Tower Records.
Well, there was a Tower Records film. That's right.
And Tower of Terror. Tower of Terror. Now, is that a movie based on a ride at Disney World?
I couldn't figure that out exactly. There was a trailer that I ran across.
The answer is yes, right?
Did they make a movie out of it? I thought they just talked about making a movie out of it.
I think this might be like the predecessor to the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Really?
I could be wrong about that.
I know they made an Eddie Murphy movie about Haunted Mansion, but I wasn't sure we had a one about the tower. Huh?
Is everybody? You're saying no? What?
Just a ride.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm sure they'll get around to it eventually. We are going to touch on some other tower-related films here in a bit, and yeah, there were a number that came up. Such I think Tower of Evil is one.
Tower of Evil. Oh, Tower of Evil is a movie that looked interesting to me, though we're not running the whole trailer to it. But it's a 70s British exploitation horror movie, also known as, I think, Trapped on the Isle of Snape. Snape.
Yeah, there's a Snape
Harry
character
Potter.
in it. Yeah.
I think the place is called Snape. There might be a person named Snape too. I haven't seen it, but it looked interesting.
But here's the thing: it doesn't have much of a tower. You have the alternate title.
Look, I was right. I'm pointing the wrong way. It looks like there is a Tower of Terror movie. Who's in it? Tell me. I can't read the names from here.
Steve Guttenberg and Kirsten Dunst.
Steve Guttenberg and Kirsten Dunst.
Wow, how did I miss? Is that real? I don't know if that's real.
Disney, so it could just have been on the
With
channel.
a cameo from Jack Sparrow.
Huh. Interesting.
Let's see. What else were we going to say about
Oh well,
Metropolis?
I mean, there's plenty of stuff to talk about. There's the wonderful artificial Maria in this, played by Bridget Helm. She's simply amazing in this. Like, there's something about a really great silent film portrayal where there's just an intensity to it.
Yeah.
And then there's something about the film quality and the speed at which everything runs that it just leaps out at you. And she's just phenomenal in this.
It's there in all the characters. I mean, the actors are just so expressive in a way that would look ridiculous in the talkies of today. If you've got a sound actor behaving with as much expression and putting as much emotion into every facial expression and movement as they do in these movies, it would look insane.
Yeah.
But in this movie, it's captivating. You can't take your eyes off it. It's just beautiful. Another great example is the actor who plays Rotwang. He's just... The level of intensity in his face is almost horrifying.
And does he have a mechanical hand in
He
this?
does.
Yes.
He's got a mechanical hand. The classic mad scientist with some kind of like mechanical body part.
This is a film where if you haven't seen it, there's a good chance you've at least seen the robot, the android here. And the android looks phenomenal and remains just this iconic vision of humanoid robotics. But there's so much in the film that it is like, it's not one of these pictures where, it has a cool monster and it has a cool robot and the rest is forgettable. No, just about everything in this movie is memorable.
Bringing it back to the ancient Near East, it doesn't just retell the story of the Tower of Babel. It has a tower in the movie.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if we mentioned this yet. I don't think we did. There is a tower in the movie that is known as the New Tower of Babel, which is the tower that the wealthy industrialists manage the city from. So it's yet another example of a tower representing power and isolation and sort of separation from humanity. But also it plays on other ancient Near Eastern themes, like there are some ancient Near Eastern gods that show up in it in a scene where there's a great machine underneath the city that the workers are working on, and the machine explodes and all these people are injured, and the young hero of the movie, Freighter, he is watching this happen, and he has a vision of the machine as the ancient Near Eastern god Moloch. And instead of the machine exploding and killing people, Moloch is devouring these human sacrifices, and the workers are being brought up into its mouth. I think this might be it we're looking at now.
It's a pretty phenomenal scene. You'll know it.
So here's the machine.
Oh yeah, this is another quality of this film and films in general that made me think of the Tower of Babel. We talked about mega projects and about the work that goes into them, and sometimes the hubris involved. This was a pretty expensive film.
Yes, it was,
and it had a bloated budget of 5.1 million Reichmarks. In today's world, that would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $200 million, which tends to be your ballpark budget for big blockbusters. So, like, I believe Rogue One was a $200 million film. A number of
Marvel movies now, are they like that?
Most of them. Some of them go up to around 250, 260 million.
Wow.
But 200 seems to be the ballpark. Yeah, so this was very much a mega project unto itself at the time, really, a cinematic mega project anyway.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way yet. So if it is a mega project that's analogous to the Tower of Babel, should we view this as evil? Should we view it as a manifestation of obscene pride?
I mean, yeah, if you hate films, I guess, you know. I mean, this kind of comes back to the tower itself. Like, what's your beef with the tower, God? I mean, they built this really cool tower. They're trying to build something that's really cool, really high. Maybe it has an important purpose for them. Maybe it's used just to chart the stars, to study the universe.
Well,
why get in the way of that?
This brings us to one more thing we should say before maybe we move on to the next movie, which is that when I was a kid and I read the story of the Tower of Babel, I always just assumed that what God was counteracting when he shut down the project was pride. People were being prideful, they were full of hubris, and they wanted to create this monument to how great they were. Looking back on the story now and knowing more about ancient Near Eastern myths, I read it a different way. I read what's going on in the story is that humankind is building a causeway with which to storm the heavens and invade in order to defeat the gods.
As we discussed in the podcast episode, there are some tellings of it, because, again, not all tellings of this myth exist in the Old Testament. There's at least one telling in which Nimrod, the general, the hunter, the man,
great hunter before Yahweh.
Yeah, the guy who's organizing all this, that he is doing it as revenge for the great flood. So there is this sense of, all right, God, I'm coming to get you.
Right.
I'm taking you down. We're building this tower, and then we're marching right up there.
Now that would be a killer movie.
Yeah.
Imagine if somebody made that movie. It's about the construction of the Tower of Babel as an act of war against the heavens.
Yeah. I guess you'd have to change how you pronounce Nimrod, though. Like, maybe you'd have to make it like Nimrod or something.
That's probably more accurate anyway, right?
Yeah, there's probably some roll of the tongue.
I think Nimrod is the Rot Wang of biblical name pronunciations. Are we ready to take a look at the next movie?
Yeah, let's
we are, but first I want to remind you, if you just tuned in recently, we are the hosts of the Stuff to Blow Your Mind podcast, a science podcast in the How Stuff Works family. We try to take a look at the weirdness of reality, peel back the curtain, and show you how strange the universe is. So you are
Robert Lamb.
And I am Joe McCormick. And our other host is Christian Sager, but he's not with us today. He should be back next time. This is Trailer Talk, where we take a look at movies related to the podcast we put out. Last week we had a podcast about the Tower of Babel. You can go look it up wherever you get your podcasts, in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button so you get our future episodes.
That's right.
And one more thing. Go to StuffToBlowYourMind.com, where you can see lots of great art curated by mostly this guy.
All right, so speaking of great art, let's move on to our next trailer, and I'm only half kidding on that, is 1987's RoboCop. And I know what you're thinking, this is not a movie about a tower, right? This is a movie about robots wailing on each other, and guys melting and toxic waste and screwing up your childhood a little bit. But no, there's a tower in this, and it does show just how ubiquitous the use of a tower or tower-like structure is in our fiction.
I'm going to go ahead and say here that RoboCop is the greatest film in cinema history.
Okay, yeah.
No, I'm not quite there yet, but RoboCop is a great movie. I went most of my life, I was in my 20s before I actually saw it. I always just assumed it was another dumb 80s action movie. I'd seen a million dumb 80s sci-fi action movies. RoboCop is genius. This movie is hilarious, it's smart. It's got the perfect 80s cast. It's got Ronnie Cox, Peter Weller, Nancy Allen, Kurtwood Smith, the dad from That 70s Show is one of the villains.
It has the guy, the old man is also
Dan O'Hurley.
Yes, who is also in Halloween 3.
Right, great movie. And he sort of qualified great movie. And of course, it has Miguel Ferrer.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes I forget about him.
Always a bad guy in these corporate 80s movies. But RoboCop actually plays on some of the same themes as Metropolis, believe it or not.
Yeah.
It's a future where there are these billionaire industrialists who rule over a poor city from a tower. And in this sense, in RoboCop, it is a company. It's a company called Omni Consumer Products, or OCP. And the bad guys are the leaders of this company. It's a sort of future capitalist dystopia where would you say this is correct? Essentially, the issue is that the city of Detroit is being privatized. The city is being sold to a company to be managed by private industry, and this company is like, what are we going to do about the crime problem? Let's make some killer robots.
Yeah, they're just kind of sucking the life out of Detroit in this film, and then in RoboCop is this interesting character who ends up he has a foot in both worlds, right? Like he is the working man, he is a fallen cop, but then he is transformed into this what's supposed to be a soulless myrmidon of the machine.
That's not RoboCop you're looking at there. That's a guy who all of the characters in the movie watch on TV. So there are just a few little clips of commercials and TV shows you see within this world, and it brilliantly communicates in very little time on the screen just how, artistically and aesthetically debased the culture is.
Yeah.
This guy is always on there going, I'd buy that for $1.
This film is, of course, horrifically violent, and I saw it way too young, and it was a bit much. Oh, here's our tower, though, right in the background here.
Oh, so we should get out of the... I don't know how to get out of the...
Oh, they can see it. It's a tower. It's a tower, Joe. So, you can't block it out.
This is the OCP tower. This is the tower that's the headquarters of the evil company in the movie. And it was actually kind of interesting. I just found out how they made this tower, which is that they took film of a real building that exists in Dallas. I think it's the old Dallas City Hall. It might still be in use.
I believe that's right.
But it was the Dallas City Hall, and then they used special effects to just add on top of it and turn this already strangely designed building it looks like it's about 6 or 7 stories maybe, into a giant tower like the Tower of Babel.
Yeah, I love how it looks because you get a sense of this thing that is perhaps driven into the earth like a spike, like it's an act of violence against the earth, and also there's a sense of like the way it's tapering out and up. There's something about like the small base of it and the just extravagance of the overall size of the tower.
Yeah, it also, of course, in RoboCop, there's a scene where a bad guy gets his comeuppance by falling out of a giant tower.
Yeah, that's at the end, because RoboCop essentially scales this thing.
Sorry, we'll come back to this. This is Ed 209, everybody's favorite character in the movie.
He's so good.
It is a police robot that was made before RoboCop and was had to be put on hold because it had some slight malfunctions and killed some board members.
And also cannot climb stairs.
Right.
Or climb down them. But yeah, there's a scene at the end where RoboCop shows up, blasts Ed 209 with some sort of anti-tank weapon, I believe, and then he scales the tower, and the big bad, Dick Jones.
Gets Ronnie Cox. I'm Dick Jones.
This is a good one.
Now, I've got to tell a story about how I went to a professional networking event. I know why, but I went to one. I guess maybe a year and a half ago or so, and people were actually trading business cards. I'd never seen that happen before, and it made me think, okay, I guess it's time for me to get some business cards. I've never had them before. So I've been meaning to order them, but I haven't done it yet. Maybe you out there can let me know if I should. What I'm going to order is business cards that give my name and title, which is that I'm Dick Jones, Vice President of Omni Consumer Products.
That would be good. Yeah, that would be better than usually what I do is I show up with like the entire box of my business cards, and I just hold it up and I go, hey, does anybody? What am I supposed to do with this?
Right.
Do I just hand them out?
Right.
I'll just leave them here and everybody take one. But that's the corporate culture that RoboCop is railing against.
Business cards are fun to throw. You ever do that?
No.
They've got a good weight for like throwing like a ninja star.
Yeah. And you get those magnetic ones, then you can like pop them right onto people's laptops.
I think we should go to the next movie in a minute here, but first let's check in and see, do we have any comments or questions that we should address? No?
All right.
Well, maybe just one more reminder. We are the hosts of the Stuff to Blow Your Mind podcast, a podcast in the How Stuff Works family. I'm not going to do the whole spiel this time, but if you want to check us out, you can go to stufftoblowyourmind.com, and if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, do it.
That's right.
Do it.
Stufftoblowyourmind.com. So our next film here is one that I believe you watched just last night.
I watched it last night.
This is The Dark Tower from 1989. It is, of course, a haunted skyscraper movie.
I think it might actually be 1987.
It was made in 87, and then it came out in 89. And it is worth noting that all of this is in the wake of Poltergeist 3, which took its haunted shenanigans into Chicago's John Hancock Center. So I feel like this is definitely a case where the big blockbuster movie came out with a haunted skyscraper, and someone said, we got to get us some of that action.
Get on the bandwagon. Yeah. Now, that's different than what I imagined. So this is a haunted skyscraper movie. Mm-hmm. What I assumed is that there's just a pitch meeting where everybody's sitting around doing like, what do you do? A haunted boat. What about a haunted boat? Nah, what about a haunted van? Yeah.
Oh God! Oh, someone needs to do that.
Yeah.
Like
a haunted
with
bus.
a mural on it. You know.
Yeah, but then they landed on haunted skyscraper. That's what it is. But no, apparently it's even less creative than that. They're just ripping off Poltergeist 3. So I watched this movie last night, and I should mention that this is in odd company after we've just been talking about Metropolis and RoboCop, 2 sci-fi masterpieces. Mm-hmm. This movie is utter garbage. It was kind of hard to finish. I was watching a grainy YouTube rip. It's funny. But anyway, okay, so to explain this movie, we'll put the poster up in a minute. It actually has kind of a good poster, but it's a haunted skyscraper movie. The tagline is, "It reaches heaven and touches hell."
Oh, that's good. The tagline is solid. The poster is amazing.
Right.
What could possibly go wrong?
So plot, there is an office tower where it's just full of offices. Most of the scenes are shot in offices that appear to be unoccupied, so I think they were just going into unfilled office space in some failing tower and filming scenes there. In this office tower, people just start dying with no explanation. There's a window washer doing the windows outside on a platform. He plummets to his death and also lands on a business executive when he falls.
Oh, man.
Why didn't that happen more often? But then also there is, there's a guy who gets crushed under an elevator at the bottom of the building. There is a guy who just randomly starts shooting people in the building. And so they bring in Michael Moriarty to figure out what's going on. And he ends up hiring a paranormal investigator. I guess actually the guy is a parapsychologist. He brings on a ghost hunter played by, what's his name here? Theodore Bickel, who plays this character named Max Gold, who's a ghost hunter. You might remember Theodore Bickel from the Rankin and Bass version of Return of the King, where he did the voice of Aragorn.
Oh, nice. I have fond memories of viewing that. I remember digging that when I was younger.
I know generally critics don't like it, but...
Well, I'm looking forward to watching all of the animated Tolkien films with my son, far before we ever consider the live action stuff.
Oh, we might have another poster coming up.
Oh,
here.
yeah, I ran across this poster too. This one's good.
In a city that... I can't read it from here.
In a city that never sleeps, this building is a nightmare.
Last time we did this, I think, was the one where we talked about slugs, and we talked about a Spanish movie there. The movie Slugs was a Spanish-American horror movie. This is a Spanish-American horror movie.
Nice.
It appears to take place in Barcelona, yet all the main characters are English-speaking actors, and they speak English in the movie. It's kind of confusing.
Now, you mentioned that Michael Moriarty's in this. Michael Moriarty is one of those actors who was always a treat because he could put so much energy into a role and just carry a film on his back. One example of this, which actually involves another skyscraper, is Larry Cohen's Q the Winged Serpent, in which he's the only guy who knows that there's a giant Aztec snake god living at the top of a New York skyrise.
He's like a ne'er-do-well in that movie, right?
Yeah,
Is he like a drug dealer or something?
Yeah, because he as I recall, he's trying to figure out how to game the system with this knowledge, and he's fabulous in that. Like Yes, there's a tremendous stop-motion winged serpent in that movie, but Moriarty outshines it.
Well, I don't think he was given his all in Dark Tower because the dialogue delivery is just hilariously off base. What it sounds like is that it looks like there are scenes that were filmed and then ADR was recorded, and he couldn't remember what his character's mood was when performing the scene, or maybe they didn't let him look back on it or something. And so there are scenes where the character appears to be talking, but the dialogue you're hearing is shouted, or vice versa. Let's see, what else do we have about this one? Two directors get credit for this movie. This is interesting.
This is a two as one, like they're credited as one person?
I don't understand. Two directors were credited on IMDb for it. One of them is Ken Wiederhorn, who directed Return of the Living Dead 2, Meatballs 2, and the TV show Freddy's Nightmares. Do y'all know about this?
Freddy's Nightmares. I remember
Freddy's Nightmares is
Yeah.
when they decided that they could turn Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy Krueger into a TV show.
I remember being
Genius.
just 100% on board with that when it aired.
Until you saw it.
No, even then I persevered and I was like, yes, I am into this, and I don't think it was any good, but
Now,
I remember being into it at the time.
My memory is that the way that show worked is that Freddy wasn't actually the main character in any of the stories. It was like it was more like Tales from the Crypt, where Freddy is the crypt keeper, and he would be there to introduce these stories that were just individual one-off stories.
Yeah, which sounds good on paper, but it's one of those things everybody thinks they can do the crypt keeper's gig, you know?
Yeah.
They think it's easy work. They think, oh, he's just a skeleton dude setting up a story, telling a few lame jokes, but it's hard work. That's why there's only one crypt keeper. Well, I mean, technically there are two Crypt Keepers because there's the movie that had an old dude playing the Crypt Keeper, but in our hearts there's only one Crypt Keeper.
You just come to assume that Robert Englund can pull off anything.
Yeah.
He's one of those people who's got endless charisma. You think you can just put him in front of a camera, tell him to go, and he'll make it work.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, you got to have some kind of content to work with.
Yeah.
I mean, we're making notes here, people, and we're no Robert Englund. But it gets even weirder. So that's one of the directors. The other director of this movie is this guy named Freddie Francis, and I looked him up. So he's directed plenty of schlocky horror movies. This seems kind of right up his alley as a director. But he's also a prominent director of photography who has shot tons of movies, and he's worked with David Lynch.
Oh, nice.
So one of the directors of this movie, Dark Tower, was director of photography on The Elephant Man, on The Straight Story, and Dune.
Oh, man. You see this a lot, don't you, when you're, especially with FX people, I find, because this will be the story. There'll be this established specialist in film. Maybe they're a great FX artist, they're a great cinematographer, and then they reach that point in their career where they try their hand at directing. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, sometimes that launches a career. Other times you can tell that they either the project itself had some other issues, or they just maybe weren't ready for this step. And then their career kind of reverts to whatever they were established at.
Yeah, you can see that. I got to fill this guy's resume out even a little bit more.
Oh, let's do it.
He did photography for Glory, the Civil War movie.
Okay.
He did photography for the remake of Cape Fear, Martin Scorsese.
Yeah.
And he did photography for The Innocents, which I've never seen, but I've heard is a great horror movie. It's the movie adaptation of Turn of the Screw by Henry James.
Okay. Huh. I
Have you not seen it
not
either?
seen that either, no.
I've heard it's fantastic, but I haven't made it to that one yet. But yeah, for something made supposedly by a famous DP, I think this movie is weirdly shot, because there are lots of shots where, like, it's a medium shot and the top of the frame cuts off the top of somebody's head. Like, it's just right at their eyebrows. It looks pretty weird.
Huh. Weird.
Yeah. Okay, well, does that about cover it for that one? Is there anything else you wanted to talk about in terms of tower movies, Robert?
Yes, I have two tower films I want us to peek at. Oh, wait, no, one more thing about the one we just watched. What's haunting the tower? What's it coming from?
Oh,
you got to know that.
Okay, you find out at the end. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention also Jenny Agutter is in it. She is, if you saw American Werewolf in London, do you remember Nurse Price in American Werewolf in London?
She was the love interest.
Yeah, the main character's girlfriend in American Werewolf in London. At the end, she tames the wolf with love and gives the police time to shoot him. But yeah, so she is in that movie, and she is one of the main characters in this movie. And I don't know if she like owns the tower or works in the tower or what. But at the end, you find out that she had this husband who was a very bad man, and she killed him, and his evil ghost is coming back for revenge, and that's what's messing up everything in the tower. And I think we're showing you a scene right now where he emerges from some cracks in a wall, and
just kind of creeps her out a little bit. Yeah,
he's got like this weird blue face, if I recall.
All right. Well, we do have two more films here, but they're not going to take up as much time because there's not a lot to talk about with them. But there are two films with the title The Tower.
Okay.
One comes out in 1985, one comes out in 1993, and they have hauntingly familiar plots. In both of these concern a skyscraper or a high-rise that is run by a sinister artificial intelligence.
I swear, I'm sure I've seen at least one of these movies, or at least I've seen a movie that has this plot.
Well, this first one is a 1985 film, a wonderful lo-fi Canadian made-for-TV film, and the quality of it, I kind of love it because it brings to mind Lathe of Heaven or a little bit of Overdrawn at the Memory Bank, you know, that kind of quality. And there's some wonderful old computer scenes, as you can tell, and the synth score for it is kind of fun. There's some fun synthesizer music in it. I'm not going to say good or great, but it's fun.
Oh, Dark Tower has a bad but enjoyably bad score. It's got
good.
this like 80s pure moods kind of score.
A fun score can like add 1 or 2 stars for me in terms of grading a film. But yeah, this one is. You know, it's not all that visually interesting except when they're looking at computers, but it's on YouTube in full. There's no trailer for it. That's why we're looking at just a quick clip.
Now, wait, is this one that had known actors in it or had no known actors?
No known actors. That I was looking them up. The directors, the makers, they all were. I believe the main. I believe the director on this, like, he was basically a career TV guy.
All right.
Yeah. So the next one is another TV movie, made-for-TV movie, called The Tower. This one from 1993. Again, skyscraper, evil AI, except this one has Paul Reiser in it. A whole lot of Paul Reiser. Like, basically, your riser per minute rate is higher than any other project I've ever looked at. Because he's just constantly on the screen, just doing maximum Paul Reiser performance.
But this is also killer AI.
Yes.
Okay.
So he's kind of a bad boy, and he essentially ticks off the AI. The AI doesn't know how to handle him, and eventually wants to terminate him.
Okay.
And a lot of running around an office building ensues with the love interest. In this scene, it's
a great
trying
way
to
to
freeze
pad a
them.
movie.
Yeah. And the whole
running
thing,
down halls.
yeah, there's a lot of running down halls, running up and down stairs, elevators, of course, and the whole thing feels like it was filmed in a meat locker with some really cool gels.
Yeah.
So it's actually kind of fun to look at.
Yeah.
If not watch. I mean, Paul Reiser is animated and kind of fun in it. And the filmmaker here, the director, Richard Kletter, is famous for, his claim to fame would be writing The Black Stallion Returns.
What?
Yeah. Never Cry Wolf.
Okay.
And The Man Who Fell to Earth, but not the Bowie one. That's another
What, a
adaptation.
different one?
A different adaptation of The Man Who Fell to Earth.
All right.
Yeah. So that's another take on the tower. But the basic concept could easily be employed in another bad movie, if not a decent movie. So I wonder if there are other AI skyscraper films out there that I'm missing.
I mean, I'm thinking about like what actually counts as a tower, because there's so many other great movies. Now we've veered from great movies into terrible movies, but there are lots of great movies that have a thing that's kind of like a tower.
Yeah.
One example I was thinking of was, of course, the Fortress of the Skeksis in The Dark Crystal.
Yes.
The Dark Crystal is one of the greatest fantasy movies ever made. And they've got this big castle. I think it's technically called a castle. It's not quite a straight up tower, but it's like a tower. They're like up there, isolated, and it plays on the same themes.
It's a castle of good that has become evil.
Yeah.
And you see the reversal of that. I think we were talking about Lord of the Rings with the White Tower of Saruman.
That turns evil. Yeah.
So you do see towers popping up at least is sort of minor elements. Krull is another one.
Ramsey here is pulling up Krull for us, and just feast your eyes on this when he gets it up. So Krull is, maybe I'll leave that to you. Describe Krull, Robert.
Oh, Krull is basically a D&D adventure made into film. It entails this world. Krull is the world. Krull is the planet, and it's threatened by the Beast, who travels about in the Black Fortress. And the Black Fortress, it's a fortress, not a tower, but still, it looms on the horizon, and then every day it appears in a different location. So our heroes go out in search of it to put an end to the tyranny.
With as evil as towers are in pretty much all fiction that features them, it makes me wonder why anybody would want to build a tall building. Like, if you're the kind of person who's like, I'm going to build a tall tower, put my name on it, all that kind of stuff, are you just saying, like, yes, I am allied with chaotic evil?
Yeah, it's like, ask yourself, do I have a tower? And if I have a tower, what kind of person am I? What does that say about me? Am I my hubris, my intentions? I don't know. Leave that one for the audience to consider.
Or maybe you're just literally considering storming the heavens and overthrowing the gods.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Ramsey's reminding us of another one that we did mention because we mentioned this film a lot, but Ghostbusters has a wonderful evil skyscraper in it.
Yes, it does. It's the... I can't remember the name of the building.
Shandor. It has just a...
It might be just 55 Central Park West,
yes.
I think, but it's constructed by the evil...
was it Igor Shandor?
Ivo Shandor, yeah.
Yeah, and this one's great. I think when we were in New York, we went and saw it, didn't we?
We might have, yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't actually look like that. It's kind of like the RoboCop building, where it's a shorter building, and they just simply, matte painted the rest of it up into the heavens.
Right. Now, of course, the cool thing about this relating to our Tower of Babel episode is that this also ties into fictional ancient Near Eastern myths, where they say the tower becomes the location of, the return of an ancient Sumerian god?
Yes, Gozer, the Gozerian, Gozer the Traveler.
So it's like a ziggurat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a very strong ziggurat element here. We could have watched the Ghostbusters trailer, but I think it would be like the fourth time we've watched the Ghostbusters trailer.
Don't want to overdo it here.
Yeah, we don't want to overdo it. And if we'd included that, we wouldn't be able to share scenes of a sweaty Paul Reiser and gel lights fighting a computer. So,
looks like we got a comment coming in, but while that is being written out for us, did we have any other movies? Ramsey mentioned earlier before we came on, it would be a shame to not at least say the words Die Hard.
Yes, Die Hard is another wonderful film based around a skyscraper, ascending a skyscraper to fight a force of evil. This, in the same sense, Dredd came up, the Judge Dredd movie, basically the same deal.
We have a comment here. Mitchell says, love the episode. Thanks, Mitchell. Carl says, really liking this.
All right. Well, I'm glad we were able to make it work.
We're failing then. We thought you would really hate it.
All right. Well, I'm sure that we're missing some wonderful tower films. If we are, you can reach out to us. You can include your comments below. We'll go back through the comments and address anything that you guys bring up that's pretty cool. But otherwise, you can always email us. We're blowthemind@howstuffworks.com, and we're all over social media. You can ping us there.
And of course, if you are not subscribed, go to wherever you get your podcasts, or go to stufftoblowyourmind.com. I guess you can't subscribe at the website, or maybe you can. There's a subscribe button that'll take you somewhere, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, wherever you get your podcasts, subscribe, get all the future episodes, and stay on board with the weirdness we bring you.
All right. Thanks for tuning in.
You learned almost too late that man is a feeling creature. And because of it, the greatest in the universe. He learned too late for himself that men have to find their own way to make their own mistakes. There can't be any gift of perfection from outside ourselves. And when men seek such perfection, they find only death, fire, loss, disillusionment, and the end of everything that's gone forward. Men have always sought an end to toil and misery. If it can't be given, it has to be achieved. There is hope, but it has to come from inside, from man himself.